rather than just trying to improve your range of movement, your joint mobility, first we want to build mobility on a foundation of stability. And so often mobility, stretching, all of that sort of stuff, they kind of get stuck in the one bundle. So just want to kind of create some distinctions here so we understand what it is that we're doing with a clear intent, then we get better results. So then we can focus in our practice.
Yeah, it's just often a misinterpretation of mobility. Often people think about mobility just circling the joints or getting more range of motion in different joint positions. At least this is what I did, and what I often observe with people coming to work with me. It's not about getting more range of motion and trying this so hard as you can. It's more likely to see, okay, why is this mobile stuck in the first place? Why is this joint stuck in the first place? And often it's just a missing point, a missing base of stability. And if there is no stability, there will be no mobility. So instead of just chasing for the next millimeter of range of motion, just look at some areas of the body if they are really supporting the structure to get mobile. If there is no support, you will gain no mobility. So it's not just going joint by joint and pressing out more range of motion, for example, in circular manner or in different movement patterns. It's more likely, okay, what does the body need to give more mobility back?
Mm.
And this is a very distinctful and useful perspective and angle to go through the body. And yeah, we are talking about five main areas, and maybe you can share more about them to look for stability and create stability.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing that's worthwhile touching on is everyone's body is different, and it's not uncommon that some areas of your body may actually be hypermobile. So, I've worked with lots of people and they're already quite mobile to the point of hypermobility where a joint goes, kind of more past the, for example, the elbow. Instead of just going to a fairly neutral position, it would go further than that. And so not that that's a problem, but without stability, then the joint lacks structural integrity around it. And so then it gets more wear and tear around it. So this is why we want to have stability as kind of like a buffer for your joints to be cushioned and so that they can move with a sense of control. So one principle here that's helpful is, the joints that you don't have control over are often the joints that build up with tension and get kind of locked and blocked and pinch on the nerves and all that sort of stuff. So this is kind of why we want to have this base of stability rather than just stretching and pushing further and further. And so having that awareness of each of your joints, you might have some joints that are hypomobile, so where they're less mobile, and then other joints which are hypermobile. If we treat each of the joint areas as those individual areas need, then we can start to rebalance the whole structure and understand our body as a whole. So there's 5 key areas really that are useful to look at rather than just trying to hyper focus on every single joint. I find looking at these 5 key structural areas create a really wonderful structural support for the whole system. So you can go through these in any particular order, but it's really useful to start at the feet. If we look at the feet as like the base of a building, if there's something happening above, we want to look below because what is that building supported on? And so if the foundations are weak and not stable, not mobile, then the whole body above can be compromised. So particularly with the case of modern footwear and all of that sort of stuff, some people refer to them as foot coffins. Um, like the foot's trapped in this thing, and over time you lose connection with it and stability. So if we can start to open up those feet and stabilize them, then everything on the ankles, the knees, the hips start to get supported. Now, this is more helpful, I find, than just trying to, for example, lots of people with tight hips, it's not uncommon, and often then think, oh, I need to improve my hip mobility. But then if we don't have a good, stable foundation of the feet, it's out of context. Like the feet are supporting the hips. So we've got to look at, well, why are the hips stiffening up? And if you don't have that stable base, that's often why. So next, we can look at developing stability around the base of the spine. So at your tailbone, if we can start to get the tailbone moving, then the hip capsule then starts to move in all directions. So it's a really useful focal point. And because the hips then connect your lower body to your upper body, often we don't really have ability or sensation awareness if the hips have been deconditioned. So by bringing the focus into the tailbone, I find it really useful to start to go, okay, well, can I stabilize the tailbone in this position, in this position, in this position, in this position? Some people, when they first start to do it, they notice their tailbone is like the pelvis is twisted or tilted forward. It's habituated to one position. So we can then start to look at, in different situations, the orientation of the tailbone. And that then helps us because naturally the hips are going to move and reorient themselves. And we start to really stabilize that deep tissue surrounding the hips. So then we look up as to, we've got the spine in between, and then we've got the base of the skull and the jaw. Often, these areas get tense and unstable, and the head starts to move forward. Then the whole postural alignment of the spine gets affected. And so then we can create this kind of like a dog chasing its tail to try and realign the spine in different ways. But if we have some awareness of the feet, have some awareness of the base of the spine, and then the base of the skull, well, then we start to look at how do we align and stabilize the body in space and start to see the relationship between these areas and then the base of the spine. Then the spine in between, while it's wonderful to move it, but we have this good, stable platform to move it from, and then understanding how those 2 points work together. Then we've got the armpits. Often, we think about opening up through the chest or strengthening through the scapula and all of that sort of stuff, but bringing our awareness to the armpit, it's like the center point of the shoulder. And this can really help to start to develop connection, like we were talking about with the tailbone. If we can become aware of what the armpit's doing, then you can start to do really every possible motion of the shoulder just by orienting and bringing your awareness to the position of the armpit. These are really, really useful focal points to start to develop stability around the body. And then the final point is the hands. And so then we can start to look at, how do my hands then stabilize the elbows, then stabilize the shoulder? If you can connect with those 5 points, then like just have a think. Your body starts to have a support structure for really any movement that you can think of. And you don't have to do all of the little joints. We're supporting the structures around them. So then the joints in between can then sort themselves out. And this is a really useful way of looking at it. And not a lot of people are aware of this. So hopefully that's helpful when you're
Yeah,
developing joint stability.
it's really bringing in the peripheries of the body, feet, hand, face, and jaw. This is often overlooked, and people are not aware of that. If you're looking at the peripheries, the body in the center will naturally balance in itself out because the tension from the outside coming in gets less, and the body can start to realign itself in a way.
Yeah.
So it's a really simple way to look at it.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful sentiment there, like letting the body realign itself because it's got support, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than always just focusing on the areas where you feel tight and unstable, but then you don't have the support to relax into, and then your body keeps going out of alignment again to reflect that.
Yeah, and I know we both know those experiences just trying to pushing the hips, for example, for more range of motion, but not being aware of that they are not supported.
Yeah, made that mistake for a long time, and adductor tears and hamstring tears and
Yeah.
yeah,
And the same for the shoulder. You're pushing out everything out of the shoulder and you're not aware of that. Maybe your wrist or your thumb or or something here is really over tensed all the time. It will not work.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So these some really useful points. So that next principle is build joint mobility on a foundation of joint stability.